I came home from chemo that day with a taste like metal in my mouth and a fatigue that made my bones feel hollow. I was hoping for the usual: my recliner, a glass of flat ginger ale, maybe an old movie on low volume to lull me into sleep. Instead, I found my neighbor's rusted Ford F-150 parked square across my driveway in a way that felt deliberate. Not the first time, but this time I didn't have the energy to knock or call or even raise hell about it. I just sat there. Eventually, I slid the seat back in my car, pulled an old flannel over me, and tried to sleep. You ever tried to sleep in your own driveway, shivering and nauseous, wondering if the guy 2 doors down considers you a human being or just an inconvenience? The twist is, I defended that guy once. A few years back, when a city wanted to fine him for illegal dumping behind his fence, I vouched for him. Told them he was just a hardworking guy trying to run a small mechanic shop from home. That was before the exhaust fumes started giving me migraines, before the yelling at 2 a.m., and long before the chemo. The next morning, I took photos. His truck, the way it blocked the access, the oil stains, the makeshift lift in his backyard. I sent it all to the city. Not out of revenge, just reality. That same afternoon, 2 inspectors showed up. He was gone within days. Shut down. But that wasn't the end. That was the beginning of something colder. Within a week, my mailbox had been smashed in. I found a dead rat duct taped to the hood of my car. Anonymous notes scrawled on pizza boxes. Coward, snake, worse. The irony being, I kept their secrets for years. But you learn real fast when you're sick who thinks your life is disposable. I'm a 53-year-old former forklift operator in Mesa, Arizona. Spent 2 decades at a logistics company that went bankrupt during COVID. Lost my job, my insurance, and then came the diagnosis. The kind of cancer with a long name and a short list of survivors. I used to believe in turning the other cheek, but cancer cured me of that. These days, I turn on my cameras instead. I didn't tell my daughter about any of it. She lives up in Flagstaff now, works at a school for kids with behavioral issues. She has enough on her plate without worrying about her father dodging threats in his own front yard. We talk twice a week, always short, always cheerful. I don't lie exactly. I just don't tell her everything. The cameras I installed weren't fancy. Cheap ones from a hardware store clearance bin, but they did the job. One caught a shadowy figure slicing the sidewall of my front tire at 2:13 a.m. Another showed someone tossing what looked like chicken bones soaked in something oily onto my lawn. For the stray dogs, maybe. Or just to let me know I was being watched too. What really got me, though, wasn't the vandalism or even the rat. It was the silence. Nobody in the neighborhood said a word. Not the guy across the street who used to wave at me every morning. Not the woman next door whose trash cans I dragged in more times than I could count. The same people who used to smile and chat when I was well, they looked right through me now like I was already gone. And maybe in their eyes, I was. Mesa's one of those places where everyone knows each other, but pretends not to when things get messy. The backyard mechanic had friends, apparently. The kind that don't knock on your door, but still make their presence felt. One morning, I found a single bolt, rusted, sharp, and deliberate, placed directly on the driver's seat of my car. Just lying there like a warning. That was the tipping point. I printed photos. I wrote a letter. Sent the whole package to the city code enforcement and the HOA, certified mail. No more silence. No more grace. I don't know what outcome I expected. I just knew I couldn't keep living like I was waiting to be scared again. If I was going to go down, it wouldn't be quietly. I'd seen too many people in this town get eaten alive by politeness. I wasn't going to be one of them. The letter from the HOA came in a cheap white envelope with a gold foil logo that always made me laugh. Like wrapping barbed wire in Christmas paper. It was official, all right, stiff language about ongoing concerns, multiple violations, and steps being taken. But buried in the middle was the one line that mattered. The matter has been escalated to municipal authorities at your request. I read that line a dozen times. It didn't feel like a win. I wasn't some crusader. I wasn't trying to take anyone down. I just wanted peace. But peace is expensive. That's the part nobody tells you. Peace takes time, evidence, money, and a willingness to make enemies out of people you used to joke with over fence lines. I used to be that guy. You know the one. Helped jumpstart cars, lent hedge trimmers, pulled weeds with old ladies on Saturdays just because. I used to think being kind was the same as being good. Now I think it's just a nice way of saying vulnerable. The fallout came quiet and ugly. Someone egged my front window. Not a splatter, but a deliberate arc of yolk and shell, like a brushstroke. My trash bins vanished for 2 days, then reappeared across the street, half-burnt. And my porch light? Smashed. Twice. But here's the part one haven't told anyone. Not even my daughter. I wasn't just scared. I was ashamed. Ashamed of how far I'd let things go. Ashamed I hadn't spoken up the first time that truck blocked my driveway. Ashamed that I had spent my life trying to keep the peace while people took pieces of me. Mesa is dry, brittle land. The kind that burns fast when someone lights a match. And someone had definitely lit one. The question was, could I keep the flames from reaching my door? It was a Tuesday when I caught him on camera. Not the neighbor, but someone else. A face I didn't recognize, walking up my driveway just past midnight. He wore a black hoodie and carried something under his arm. At first, I thought it was a package. Then I realized it was a canister, gas, maybe paint. Hard to say in the grainy footage. He didn't knock, just stood there. Then he turned and spray painted something on my garage door in slow, almost lazy strokes. A single word in jagged red letters. Snitch. I sat at my kitchen table, replaying the video over and over. I didn't feel fear at first. I felt insulted, like I'd been downgraded from human to symbol. No longer a guy with a life and a diagnosis and a daughter. Just a target. The next morning, I emailed the footage to the city, the HOA, and, this time, the local news tip line. I didn't care about embarrassment anymore. I wanted eyes on this. Let the neighborhood see what keeping quiet buys them. Let them decide if they're okay living next to threats that wear familiar shoes. By noon, a rep from the HOA called. She sounded nervous. Said the board was reviewing the footage and would be in touch regarding next steps. Which meant they were scrambling. Good, but that wasn't the real surprise. That came 2 hours later when I got a text from my former neighbor's cousin. We talked once or twice before, back when he was still friendly and pretending he didn't know about the shop out back. The message was short. Watch your six. Some of them aren't done. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it was a threat. It wasn't. It was a warning, which meant someone else out there knew the game wasn't over. That maybe it never was. A week after the video, I started seeing a man in a blue cap walking past my house. Same time every morning, 6:43 a.m., like clockwork. He never looked up, never acknowledged me, just passed by with that slow, measured pace. Nothing strange on its own, except I'd lived on that street for almost 18 years, and I'd never seen him before. There's a kind of paranoia that creeps in slowly. It doesn't shout. It just whispers in the hum of the fridge, in the flicker of porch lights, in footsteps that feel just a little too deliberate. On the fourth morning, I decided to sit on the porch. Mug in hand, blanket around my legs like some old man auditioning for a Norman Rockwell painting. When a man in the blue cap passed, he didn't flinch. Just kept walking, but his pace changed. Slower. More aware. He was watching me too. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about that text. Some of them aren't done. About how the worst damage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's subtle. An open gate that used to be closed. A garden hose that looks just slightly off-center. People don't realize how much you memorize about your home until something's off. The blue cat man was never caught on camera. That was the part that gnawed at me. Always passed just outside the lens angles. Like he knew where the blind spots were. I started checking my security footage every morning before coffee. Not because I expected to catch something, but because I needed to feel like I was doing something. Action, even pointless action, feels better than helplessness. And then one morning, there was no blue cap. Just an envelope taped to my mailbox. Inside was a single photograph, me asleep in my car. From a night, I couldn't make it inside. The message was clear. They'd seen me at my lowest. And now they wanted me to know it. I didn't notice the envelope at first. It was taped low on the mailbox, tucked where the morning sun wouldn't hit it. No stamp. No return address. Just a blank, beige envelope with the edges curled like old paper left out too long. I assumed it was another warning, maybe a fine or another HOA notice. But inside was a single glossy photograph. Me, asleep in my car. That same night, after chemo, slumped in the front seat with a flannel pulled over my chest, mouth slightly open, face turned toward the window like I was trying to escape in my sleep. It was taken from the passenger side, close enough that whoever took it could smell the chemo sweat on my skin if they leaned in. It was intimate in the worst possible way. I didn't panic. I didn't run back inside or call the police. I just stood there in the driveway, staring at it like it was a mirror into some other reality. A version of me I didn't recognize, fragile, helpless, watched. I felt exposed, not just vulnerable, but documented. People talk about invasion of privacy like it's something abstract, something legal. But this wasn't about legality. This was personal. This was surgical. Whoever took that photo wanted me to know I'd been seen. Not to scare me. No, this was worse. They wanted me to understand how easy I was to reach, and how little I could do about it. I carried the photo inside with trembling fingers. Didn't even lock the door. Just walked straight to the kitchen, pulled a file folder from the drawer under the phone, and slid the photo in behind the others. I labeled it Incident 14. That's how I've been living. Cataloging fear like it's a part-time job. The dead rat? Incident 2. The bolt on the seat? Incident 6. The spray-painted garage? Incident 9. I used to name files things like insurance, photos from Tahoe, recipes. Now, they read like a crime log no one asked me to write. I've become the kind of man who double-checks the back seat of his car before starting it. The kind who sleeps with a baseball bat under the bed. Not because I think I'll need it, but because not having it would make me feel stupid. I used to believe in talking things out. Now I believe in being prepared. Here's the thing they don't tell you about surviving cancer. People assume you're done suffering once the treatment ends. But the loneliness, the slow erosion of who you were before the illness, that doesn't get a timeline. That lingers. Before all this, I thought I had one more reinvention left in me. I lost my job, lost my wife, lost pieces of myself I still can't name. But I thought maybe I'd come out the other side with something to show for it. A second act. Maybe not big, just peaceful, quiet. Now, every quiet moment feels like the eye of a storm I can't see coming. That night, I went to the garage and dug out an old filing cabinet from beneath boxes of winter coats and tax returns. It was dented, one drawer rusted shut, but the top opened fine. I slid in the file, stared at the tab for a long while. Evidence, it read. Not protection, not justice. Just evidence. Because I knew better than to expect justice now. What I wanted was history. A record. Proof that I was here. That I fought back. That I mattered, even if it was only on paper. They had shown me I was being watched. I wanted them to know I was watching too. The mailbox stopped rattling after that. No more envelopes. No more dead rodents. Just silence. But not the kind you welcome. Not the kind that means it's over. This was the type of quiet that feels like it's leaning over your shoulder, waiting for you to make the next move. And for a while, I didn't. I still checked the footage every morning. Still cataloged every odd sound. Every flicker of the porch light that wasn't timed. Still kept that bat near the bed. But I didn't retaliate. I didn't escalate. I just watched. And waited. It reminded me of the weeks after my divorce. When the house was still full of her things, but her scent was fading. When you start hearing noises that aren't there, the phantom opening of a drawer, the imagined sound of the garage door at 5 p.m. You know she's not coming back, but part of you keeps preparing for the moment she does. That's what this was starting to feel like. Then, late one night, the doorbell rang. I froze. Not just paused, I mean full body stillness, like my blood decided to halt mid-circulation. It was almost 2 a.m., and no one rings a doorbell in Mesa at that hour without a damn good reason. The camera didn't show anyone. That's what rattled me. I pulled up the feed on my phone. Nothing but static for 7 seconds. 7 seconds. Right when the doorbell rang. Then snapped back into focus, but whoever had been there was gone. A blackout. Local. Intentional. The next day, I emailed the footage, what little there was, to the same city rep and HOA board. Marked it Incident 15. Added a note at the bottom of the file. Camera disruption detected. Duration, 7 seconds. Unidentified visitor. Possible tampering. The silence became heavier after that. Not quieter, heavier. Like I was breathing soup. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors I used to nod to started pulling their dogs to the other side of the sidewalk. I wasn't just the sick guy anymore. I was the guy who stirred up trouble. The one who brought the inspectors. The one who didn't play nice. You think people would care about safety? About illegal businesses? About trespassing? About intimidation tactics? But safety's inconvenient when it means confronting people who smile at your barbecues. When it threatens to disrupt your little two-story illusion of harmony. I learned that the hard way. The HOA sent a letter, not to support me, but to remind all residents of proper decorum and dispute resolution channels. No mention of the photo. No mention of the vandalism. Just a veiled slap on the wrist. I sat at the kitchen table, letter in hand, and felt something bitter roll over my tongue. They weren't going to help. I was on my own. After that letter from the HOA, I stopped writing to them. No more emails, no more footage, no more polite requests for support. What was the point? It was theater. They pretended to be neutral, and I pretended they still had a conscience. I was done pretending. So I turned inward, focused on the archive. It became my ritual. Every morning, time-stamped notes, camera footage snapshots, screen captures, printouts of texts. I even started printing physical copies of everything and storing them in a file box under the bed. Not on a hard drive. Not in the cloud. On paper. Something no one could delete if they ever got into my accounts. Why? Because somewhere deep down, I knew if something ever happened to me, someone needed to see the truth. Not my neighbor, not my ex-wife, not even the city. Someone. Someone needed to open that drawer and realize this wasn't just a list of complaints. It was a slow, methodical record of a person being erased. I became meticulous, obsessive. I dropped a mug in the kitchen once, simple accident, and still checked the camera feed to make sure it wasn't someone inside. I started memorizing the cars that passed my house, logging which porch lights flickered and which didn't. I'd open the mailbox twice some days, not because I expected mail, but because the latch didn't feel right, like someone had touched it. Sometimes, I'd talk to the computer screen, not to anyone real, just out loud. I'd say things like, there he is again, 3:21 a.m., same hoodie, or second time this week that trash bin moved. As if someone was listening, as if I wasn't just documenting, but reporting to a world that had stopped responding. Then one night, while I was reviewing footage from the backyard, the doorbell rang again. But this time, it wasn't 2 a.m. It was 8 o'clock sharp, almost polite. The camera showed a man in a dark windbreaker, face obscured. He stood quietly, held something in his hand, a paper bag. Didn't knock, didn't shift his weight, just waited. After 2 minutes, he set the bag on the doorstep and left. I didn't open it right away. I watched the footage 5 times, then 10. Finally, I stepped outside. Inside the bag was a thermos of soup, still warm, and a note written in firm, careful handwriting. I see you're still standing. So am I. No name, no hint of who sent it. I sat down on the floor, back against the door, and something in me cracked. Not in fear, but in relief. I wasn't alone. Not completely. Someone was watching too. Someone understood. And maybe, just maybe, someone else was tired of being quiet. For days, I stared at that note. It sat on the kitchen table like a relic, something sacred in a house that had only known tension. I didn't eat the soup. I didn't throw it away either. I kept it sealed in the thermos like it might hold proof that decency hadn't entirely died in my zip code. And I started to notice things. The man in the blue cap never came back, but someone else started showing up, or maybe it had always been there, and I just never seen them clearly. An older woman, 2 houses down, who used to keep to herself. I saw her one morning standing on her porch with binoculars, pretending to look at birds. But I know the difference between watching the skies and watching your street. Her gaze wasn't upward. One evening, my security feed caught her gently nudging one of my trash bins back toward the curb. Not a big act, not something anyone would notice. But she looked at the camera when she did it, right at it, and gave the smallest nod, like she knew I'd see it. That nod meant everything. After that, I started noticing more. Small human things. A neighbor quietly trimming my overgrown hedge. A bag of groceries left on my porch with no note, but the exact brand of crackers I'd bought weekly for years. Someone out there was keeping track of me the same way I had been tracking everyone else. Quietly, consistently. And with that came something else, guilt. I had built walls so thick I'd stopped seeing who was trying to reach through them. I was so busy documenting threats that I'd missed gestures. So focused on surviving, I forgot what it looked like to be supported. I used to think strength meant being untouched. Now I think maybe it means being seen fully, even when you're falling apart, and still showing up the next day anyway. The game hadn't stopped. The man who spray painted my garage hadn't been arrested. The dead rat still lived in my memory, as did the bolt on my seat. But now, those things shared space with something else. Soup. Crackers. A nod. Proof that not everyone turned their head. But some people stay. Quietly. Unshakably. Without thanks or recognition. And that, maybe, was what saved me more than any camera ever could. The thing about survival is that it doesn't come with a finish line. There's no parade. No one hands you a medal. You just wake up one morning and realize you made it through another night, and that you'll have to do it all again. That realization came to me slowly one morning in March. I'd been up late reviewing some new footage, though there hadn't been much. A few teenagers loitering near the corner. A raccoon knocking over the compost bin. The usual, but nothing menacing. Nothing that made me reach for the folder under the bed. Instead, I woke up to the sound of birds, not something I'd noticed in a long time. Mesa isn't exactly known for its symphonies, but that morning, a pair of cactus wrens had taken up on the edge of my roof. I watched them from the kitchen window as I waited for the kettle to boil, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel the need to check the cameras before my tea. There was no epiphany, no sudden peace, but there was a shift, a small one. I found myself sweeping the porch, watering the dry patch in the corner of the yard I'd been ignoring. Not because I expected gratitude from the neighborhood, but because for the first time in what felt like forever, I was doing it for me. That's when I started writing things down in a different folder. Not just the incidents, but the moments of grace. The hot thermos, the mystery groceries, the quiet nod from a woman I used to overlook. I labeled the new folder proof of life. And slowly it began to fill. I still carry the fear. I still flinch when a car idles too long outside. I still check locks twice before bed. But those things aren't the story anymore. They're just part of the landscape. What matters now is this. I'm still here. I didn't let them hollow me out. And while I may never trust my neighbors fully again, I've learned to spot the ones who are worth noticing. Because someone always stays. Someone always watches back. And maybe that's enough. I don't pretend everything's okay now. The neighborhood hasn't changed. The people who turn their backs still cross the street when they see me. Some never looked me in the eye again. That's fine. I'm not looking for redemption. Not from them. The backyard garage is still empty. No revving engines. No oil slicks in the alley. Just a slab of cracked concrete and the ghost of a business that should never have been there. Every once in a while, I see someone slow their car as they pass it, like they're checking to see if it's safe to come back. It isn't. Not while I'm here. Because I didn't disappear. I didn't sell the house. I didn't fade out like they hoped. I stayed. And not out of spite, though I'd be lying if I said that didn't help. I stayed because leaving would have made everything they did feel justified. It would have said, yes, you won. But they didn't. I still mow my lawn. Still wave at the kids who haven't been taught to fear me. I still water that stubborn patch of green by the fence. Still talk to the woman 2 doors down about birds and the heat and whatever else passes for community these days. I installed 2 more cameras, not because I'm afraid, but because I like the symmetry. One faces the old garage. The other points right at the mailbox where this all began. Sometimes I sit on the porch in the evening with a thermos. Not the same one, but a similar one I bought myself. And I think about all the things they tried to take. My peace. My safety. My voice. They didn't get them. I did. And that's the part no one talks about. Not survival, but recovery. The slow, painful process of rebuilding who you are after you've been dismantled in silence. It doesn't come easy. Doesn't come loud. But it comes. Piece by piece. I'm not the same man who defended his neighbor to the city. I'm not the man who slept in his car and thought silence would protect him. I'm something else now. Still standing. Still watching. Just more guarded than ever.